last question, which is, I mean, you obviously could have worked or stayed in America or gone to America or other places or other universities, but you've been here for 28 years or something like this.
Yeah.
Is Cambridge a good place for you to work, and in what way?
It's a wonderful place for me to work. I think partly because I know it so well. So things are possible. I don't have to think about what to do in order to do X. I can do it. There are all the conventional things about wonderful people, stimulating colleagues. Yes, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Actually, I mean, you know, I say that in a slightly sort of dismissive kind of way. It is not only absolutely true, it is absolutely vital. They are wonderful. And I've had the most stimulating and exciting conversations. But I still think that the key events for me were more to do with people from outside, I think. More to do with people that I met in Australia and Germany and in America.
Well, those provided, I mean, the definition of poetry is emotion recollected in tranquility. They provided the shaking about and the emotion, and
Indeed.
Cambridge provides the tranquility or
Yes.
stable environment in which to work out the consequences of.
That's quite right, but I should say that it works both ways. And there was a very vivid demonstration of this in about 1983 or 3, I would think. Corey Goodman came to visit me here in Cambridge, and I had just discovered a way of doing something that we did routinely with grasshopper embryos, which was to dissect them, lay them out flat on a cover slip on a piece of glass, and put them under a microscope and do things to them. And we'd done that with grasshopper embryos, which were enormous. And now we could do it with Drosophila embryos. I showed it to Corey, and you speak of emotions. He went berserk. He was absolutely out of control. We sat in my lab and we fiddled. We did things. We tried to inject dye into neurons in these embryos. And then we went home, and Corey's the most intensely creative, excitable person, and he had no outlet for this surging emotion that was pouring through him, so he needed to eat instead. So he shoved toast into my toaster in a frenzy until he broke it. And I always feel that that, to me, was a moment of high drama in which, you know, emotion really manifested itself in this sort of scientific enterprise. It was wonderful. Yeah. Well, there were just there are two things, I think, about the way I feel about the scientific enterprise. And the first is that not sure quite how this fits in, but when I was doing my work as a PhD student, I was doing things for the sake of doing them, and it was an era when that was possible, and you were allowed to do that sort of thing. And then I went to Australia, and I remember meeting Ian Meinertzhagen, and we were talking about the stuff that I'd done on the gin trap, and he said, "Oh yes," he said, "that's very interesting." He said, "But it's not exactly mainstream, is it?" And I thought, well, I don't know, that's an idea that I hadn't come across before, because up till then everything had been possible. But now there was this thing about doing things that were the thing to do, the mainstream thing. So that became more and more apparent as life went on, and it's now the dominant thing. I mean, people do what everybody else does, and you can only get money to do certain things. And that has two sort of corollaries, really. And one is that I found that competitiveness amongst scientific colleagues often takes the form of being, or people have expressed it to me as that they are, that the thing that really interests them about their colleagues is the science. They want to know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and so on and so forth. And they value people because of their science. And for me, that has never been the case. It really has not. It does for people that I don't really know, like Sydney, for example. I mean, I don't know Sydney as a person, but I value him because of the intense intellectual stimulation he gives me. But the people that I've worked with, the people that I know intimately through science, I value them as friendships. That's, for me, the intensely important thing, not the science that they do. And that seems to be against the grain of the way many people think about this. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that, but for me, the friendships matter more than the science. The other corollary is the question of being allowed to do what you want to do. This, again, I first perceived in Australia because I realised that this was a wasting asset, my life as a scientist, that it need not necessarily go on, and that it was expensive, and that it was an incredible privilege to be able to do these things, and that, like an artist, you crave a studio and materials, and as a scientist you need a laboratory and materials, and if those are taken away from you, how difficult life would be, and that has always remained with me, that I don't care about being paid to do science. I really, really do not care. What I do care about is being given the opportunity to do it. So retirement is an interesting thought. I cannot leave the microscope, for example. Whatever happens, I have to have a microscope that I can look at things with. And the other thing is that I don't give a damn about being paid, as I said before. I mean, in retirement, if it is possible, before I become doddery, to continue to fiddle with things and be allowed to do that, then that's just as good as it gets. And I can't imagine anything better. But I felt, I'm not sure that those attitudes are the same as everybody's attitudes. And I just think that they're certainly very integral to the way I do things.
I had one further question. Several times you've mentioned films, Cocktail and so on, on the beach. And has film been an important part?
Absolutely. Yes. How clever of you to notice. But yes, films, that is the thing, apart from many other things. But I mean, films are desperately important to me. I love cinema. And when I was in Australia, I had the great good fortune to be offered a job as a film critic for the Australian Broadcasting Commission. So I actually had a weekly programme where I broadcast to Canberra about films, and I got free tickets to go to drive-ins to see things like Last Tango in Paris and things, and comment on them. But the moment, without wanting to bore anybody with these details, but the moment for me when I realised that there was something out there was, like many other people, I went and saw The Seventh Seal, and it was a revelatory experience. And shortly after that, I saw Last Year in Marienbad. And again, I was struck dumb by it, and how it was I've never recovered. No.
Kurosawa?
Kurosawa too. Yes.
You just feel in the hands of a master, as with Bergman.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's a lovely way to end.
Good.